Oh, what a glorious morning it was. I stood on my porch, the world still hushed, cradling my chipped ceramic mug like it was an old friend. The coffee inside was dark and rich, steam curling up to kiss the crisp air. My land stretched out before me, acres of wild, untamed beauty, glowing golden under the first rays of sunlight. This was my place, my haven from the chaos of the world. I breathed in deep, letting the earthy scent of dew-soaked grass fill my lungs. Peaceful, perfect, until what was that? A rumble in the distance, low and ominous, like a storm rolling in, but the sky was clear. I squinted down my private dirt road, and my heart stopped. A parade of vehicles, SUVs, campers, sedans snaked toward me, tires churning up clouds of dust that swirled like angry spirits. Was this a nightmare? Had I slipped into some bizarre dream? No, this was real, and it was coming straight for me. I nearly dropped my mug, coffee sloshing over the rim as my hands trembled. Who were these people? What gave them the audacity to invade my land? My pulse raced, a mix of shock and fury igniting in my chest. I set the mug down hard on the porch railing and stepped forward, boots crunching against the gravel. The convoy rolled to a stop, parking wherever they damn well pleased, as if my property were some roadside attraction. Doors flung open, and out they came, people stretching their arms, yawning wide, acting like they'd just pulled into a luxury campground. Tents were yanked from trunks, coolers scraped across my grass, and kids bolted out, shrieking and racing through my wildflowers. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my jaw slack. What in the hell was happening to my morning? Then I saw her. Oh, there she was, Karen, the self-crowned queen of the HOA, strutting toward me with her blonde bob bouncing like she was leading a victory march. That clipboard in her hands might as well have been a scepter. And her smug grin? It was the kind that made you want to scream. I knew that look too well. It was the face of someone who thought rules didn't apply to her, who believed she could bend the world to her will. My stomach churned as she approached, her heels clicking against the earth like she owned it. "Morning, neighbor," she sang out, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We so appreciate your generous donation to the HOA's annual camping retreat." Donation? Donation? I blinked, my brain scrambling to catch up. My what? I croaked, the words barely escaping my throat. She laughed, a sharp, grating sound that clawed at my nerves, and waved a hand like I was some confused child. "Oh, don't be silly. I told the HOA we needed a community getaway, and your land? It's just perfect. All this space far from the city, and let's be real, it's not like you're doing anything important with it." Not doing anything important? My land, my home, reduced to some empty lot for her whims? I felt the heat rising, my jaw locking so tight I could hear my teeth grinding. "Karen," I said, forcing the words out, "this is my land. Private property. None of these people have permission to be here." She tilted her head, giving me that infuriating smile, the one that said I was the unreasonable one. Well, technically, the HOA agreed we needed a shared outdoor experience. And since you're part of the neighborhood, I am not part of the HOA. I snapped, my voice slicing through the air like a blade. How many times did I have to drill that into her thick skull? Her smile flickered, just for a heartbeat, before she plastered it back on. "Well, you should be. Anyway, we've already made arrangements. It's just one weekend. Honestly, you should be grateful to be included." Grateful? Grateful? Was she out of her mind? I scanned the madness unfolding around me. Someone was hammering stakes into my soil. Kids were trampling my flowers. And a guy in cargo shorts, seriously, cargo shorts, was rigging a hammock between my oak trees. A fire pit sparked to life, smoke curling into the air. This wasn't a retreat. It was a full-on invasion. "This is trespassing," I growled, my temper hanging by a thread. "You need to tell everyone to leave. Now." Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was some drama queen. "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic. We're all neighbors. It's just camping, I echoed, incredulous. On my land, with 100 strangers I didn't invite? Before I could lay into her, a piercing shriek cut through the chaos. A teenage girl, all flailing arms and horrified gasps, hopped on one foot, her sneaker smeared with fresh cow manure. Ew, gross! There's poop everywhere, she wailed. Her mom spun around, eyes wide with panic. Wait, what? This isn't a cleaned-up campsite? Karen faltered, her confidence cracking. Well, technically no, but no bathrooms? Another voice cried out, dripping with dread. A guy in a Hawaiian shirt wrinkled his nose, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. And what's that smell? I couldn't hold it back, a smirk tugged at my lips. This wasn't some pristine park with flush toilets and picnic tables. This was raw land, wild and unapologetic, complete with mud, manure, and the faint whiff of nature's less glamorous side. Did they really think I'd rolled out a red carpet for them? But Karen wasn't ready to surrender. She planted her hands on her hips, glaring at me like I'd personally offended her. Look, we planned this. People took time off work, some even brought RVs. It's too late to cancel. Not my problem. I shot back, my voice flat and final. Her glare sharpened, like she could will me into submission. Well, technically, since the HOA agreed, for the last time, Karen, I bellowed, my patience shattering. The HOA has zero say over my land. You and every single person here are trespassing. A hush fell over the crowd. Nervous glances darted between the campers, some shifting their weight, others clutching their gear a little tighter. Were they finally getting it? Did they realize they'd been duped? Karen, though, stood firm, her lips pursed in a tight, defiant line. Well, she huffed, crossing her arms. If you're going to be so selfish about it, maybe we should put it to a vote. A vote? A vote? I stared at her, dumbfounded. You think you can just vote to steal my land? She jutted her chin out, smug as ever. Well, we live in a democracy, don't we? I dragged a hand down my face, sucking in a deep breath to keep from exploding. Fine, Karen. You want a democracy? Let me introduce you to my cabinet. I yanked my phone from my pocket and punched in a number. It's time, I said, then hung up before she could blink. Karen's brows furrowed, suspicion creeping into her eyes. Time for what? A low, rumbling growl answered her. From behind the barn, they emerged, my true protectors. 6 massive dogs, each one a masterpiece of strength and discipline, stalked into view. Their black coats gleamed in the sunlight, muscles flexing with every step. Titan, the leader, a Belgian Malinois with eyes like burning coals, fixed his gaze on the crowd. The air grew heavy, thick with tension. People froze. A bag of marshmallows hit the ground with a pitiful thud. Are those friendly? A woman whimpered, ducking behind her husband. I smirked, folding my arms. Depends. Titan unleashed a bark that shook the earth, deep and commanding. Karen's face went white as a sheet, her clipboard trembling in her hands. You can't just bring attack dogs into this. Oh, but you can bring 100 strangers onto my land? I fired back, stepping closer. Titan advanced, shadow at his flank, their eyes locked on Karen like she was a rabbit in a snare. She stumbled back, her bravado crumbling. You wouldn't. They're trained, I said coolly, not to attack unless someone gives them a reason. And that was it. Panic erupted. Campers scrambled like ants under a magnifying glass, shoving tents into bags, tripping over stakes in their haste. Cargo Shorts abandoned his hammock mid-knot, and a family bolted for their minivan, kids wailing in tow. Karen, clinging to an SUV hood, shrieked, I'm calling the police. I laughed, actually laughed, and pulled out my phone. Go ahead, I beat you to it. Right on cue, 2 squad cars rolled up, gravel crunching under their tires. Karen's jaw dropped, her eyes darting between me and the officers stepping out. Karen's composure shattered as the police approached, her clipboard now a useless shield. The campers, once so carefree, stood silent, watching their grand retreat unravel. She sucked in a breath, squared her shoulders, and marched toward the officers with all the dignity she could muster. "Thank goodness you're here!" she cried, flipping through her papers like a frantic lawyer. This man unleashed dangerous animals on innocent families. We were just enjoying a community event and he's threatening us. She jabbed a finger at me, her voice wobbling with crocodile tears. "Arrest him!" The taller officer, sporting a mustache that screamed authority, gave her a flat stare before turning to me. "Sir, you called about trespassers?" "Yeah," I said, calm as could be. "This is my land. No one's got permission to be here, and now I've got a crowd treating it like a free-for-all. The dogs? They're just keeping things civil." The second officer, a woman with a no-nonsense vibe, eyed Karen. "Ma'am, do you have written permission from the owner?" Karen blinked, flustered. "Well, the HOA agreed this was perfect for our retreat. It's just one weekend." "That's not what I asked," the officer said, her tone clipped. "Do you have written permission?" Karen floundered, her mouth flapping uselessly. She glanced at the campers, but they were too busy packing, avoiding her gaze. The officer turned to me. "Proof of ownership?" I sauntered to my truck, popped the glove box, and handed over a folder neat, tidy, and irrefutable. She skimmed it, nodding. "Registered in your name. No HOA ties, no shared spaces." She snapped it shut and faced Karen. "You're all trespassing," Karen sputtered, red-faced. "That can't be right. He's in the neighborhood. The HOA has jurisdiction." The officer's eyebrow arched. "That's not how it works. He's not an HOA member, and this isn't HOA land. You've got no authority here." Karen's face twisted, a mix of fury and defeat. "But we planned this for months. People took time off." "Not his problem," the officer said, cutting her off. A growl rumbled from Titan, his massive frame looming closer. Karen yelped, nearly toppling backward. "Get those monsters away." "They're on my land," I said with a grin. "They stay." The mustached officer cleared his throat. "All right, folks, 10 minutes to pack up and leave, or we start writing tickets." Chaos reignited. Tents were stuffed into cars, coolers dragged away, kids herded back to vans. Karen whirled on me, venom in her eyes. "This isn't over. You're ruining everything." I shrugged. "Next time, try knocking." She stormed off, slamming her car door with a bang that echoed across the field. One by one, the invaders fled, Titan's final bark chasing them down the road. The officers lingered until the last car vanished, then nodded at me. "Nice dogs," the woman said. "Best security around?" I replied. As they drove off, I stood alone again, the silence settling back over my land. Victory tasted sweeter than that morning coffee ever could. The officer's eyebrow arched high, his voice thick with incredulity. "Are you kidding me? That's not how property laws work. The HOA only has power over people who signed up for their nonsense." "This guy?" He jabbed a thumb my way, his eyes narrowing. "Not a member. This land, not under your precious HOA's thumb. You've got no say here, lady." Karen's face twisted into a snarling, furious mess like some cartoon villain ready to explode. "But we planned this for months," she howled, her voice piercing the air like a siren. She stomped her foot, kicking up a cloud of dirt, a tantrum straight out of a toddler's playbook. "People took time off work. We printed schedules. Do you hear me?" The officer's patience was unraveling fast, his jaw tightening like a coiled spring. "Ma'am," he snapped, "that's not his burden to bear. You don't get to storm onto someone's property just because it suits your little picnic plans." "Who do you think you are?" But before Karen could fire back, a sound sliced through the chaos, a low, rumbling growl that made my heart pound with pride. Titan, my hulking protector, lumbered forward, his shadow swallowing the ground beneath him. His ears stood sharp, his dark eyes drilling into Karen with a glare that practically shouted, "Go ahead, test me." Karen's bravado shattered in an instant. She let out a choked, frantic squeak and stumbled back, her fancy shoes snagging the dirt. Those monsters," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Why haven't you gotten rid of those beasts?" A slow, triumphant smirk curled my lips. "They're on my land, Karen," I said, my tone dripping with satisfaction. "Unlike you and your trespassing posse, they've got every right to be here." The officer's mouth twitched. He was fighting a laugh. I could tell, but he pulled himself together. "All right, everyone," he barked, his voice booming over the crowd. "You've got 10 minutes to pack up and scram. Stick around past that, and we'll slap you with trespassing tickets faster than you can blink. Get moving!" Panic erupted like a thunderclap. Campers bolted into action, snatching up gear in a wild frenzy. Tents were crammed into bags, zippers whining under the strain. Coolers scraped across the earth, leaving wet streaks in the grass. A few whined under their breath. We didn't even roast our marshmallows. But argue with the cops? Not a chance. They knew better. Karen, though she wasn't ready to surrender, she spun toward me, her face blazing red, eyes wild with fury. "This isn't over," she spat, venom lacing every word. "You're destroying a community event. You're turning yourself into the neighborhood's villain, don't you see that?" I shrugged, cool as ice in the face of her fire. "I don't give a damn about your neighborhood, Karen," I said, my voice steady and unshaken. "This is about my land. And if you or your crew dare try this again, my dogs won't just stand there looking pretty, they'll show you what they're made of." Her face went pale, the color draining like water from a busted pipe. You wouldn't dare," she stammered, her voice trembling. I stepped closer, my boots crunching the gravel, and dropped my voice to a menacing whisper only she could hear. "Oh, I would. Try me, Karen, see what happens." Her mouth flapped open, then snapped shut, her jaw locking tight as defeat sank in. With one last scorching glare, she stormed off to her SUV, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The sound echoed across my land like a gunshot. I stood tall, watching the last stragglers scurry to their cars, sneaking wary glances at my dogs. Titan and the pack held their ground, a wall of fur and muscle. Then Titan let loose one final, earth-shaking bark, a countdown to chaos. That sent the stragglers sprinting, tires squealing as they fled. The officers hung back until the dust settled, every last car vanishing down the road. The mustached one turned to me, tipping his hat with a grin. "Well, damn, you handled that like a champ." I flashed a half smile, relief washing over me. "Couldn't have done it without you backing me up." "Thanks." The female officer eyed my dogs, then me, a smirk tugging at her lips. "That's one hell of a security team you've got there." I laughed, ruffling Titan's ears. "Better than any alarm system out there and twice as loyal." She nodded, her tone shifting to a warning. "Keep us posted if that woman stirs up more trouble. Something tells me she's not done yet." I sighed, already bracing for the next Karen-sized disaster. "Oh, I'll be ready, count on it." The officers climbed into their cars, engines humming as they rolled away, leaving me alone with my land at last. I sucked in a deep breath, my shoulders finally loosening. The silence swept back in, a sweet reward after the storm. Victory pulsed through me. I'd won. I turned to my dogs, who sat alert, eyes scanning the horizon. "You guys were amazing," I said, my voice warm with gratitude. Titan's tail thumped the ground, and Shadow nudged my hand before trotting off to patrol. My guardians, my heroes. I grabbed my coffee mug, cold as stone now, but who cared? I sipped it anyway, the bitter taste blending with the thrill of triumph. My land was mine again, and Karen? She just learned a hard truth. Mess with me, and you'll lose every time. The campers were gone, leaving only flattened grass and scattered trash behind. I stood there, breathing in the stillness my sanctuary reclaimed. Titan and the pack eased up, their ears relaxing, tails wagging lazily. Shadow huffed a satisfied grunt and flopped onto the porch, stretching out like she owned the place. It was over, or so I thought. Wasn't that a fool's hope? Just as I turned to head inside, tires screeched against gravel, shattering the calm. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I didn't need to look. I knew. Karen's SUV screeched to a halt at my driveway's edge, and she burst out, fury incarnate. Her hands shook not from fear, oh no, but from rage so hot it could melt steel. She locked eyes with me and jabbed a finger like she was aiming a gun. "You!" she snarled. "This isn't over!" she roared, charging toward me like a bull. "You think you can humiliate me like that? Toss me off my community's land and just walk away?" I didn't budge, my face a blank slate. She wanted me to crack, to flinch, but I wouldn't give her the pleasure. Not today, not ever. "This isn't your land, Karen," I said, my voice calm but ironclad. "This is my property. Your HOA fairy tale means nothing here." Her lip curled into a vicious sneer. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "You live among us but refuse to pitch in. You spit on the rules that keep this neighborhood alive." I let out a dry, biting laugh. "Your rules? The ones I never agreed to?" "Sorry, Karen, you don't own me or my land." She stomped her foot again. God, was she 5 years old, and wailed, "You shamed me in front of everyone. They think I'm nothing now. Do you even realize what you've done?" I smirked, sharp and cold. "Yeah, I showed them. You're not the big shot you pretend to be. Deal with it." Her face turned beet red and I braced for another scream, but she sucked in a breath, her eyes narrowing into slits. Oh, hell, that wasn't good. She was plotting something nasty. "I hope you're ready for what's coming," she purred, her voice syrupy with menace. Her eyes glinted like a predator's. "I've got friends, powerful friends. You might have the cops on your side today, but wait until the county steps in. You'll wish you'd never crossed me." I crossed my arms, unflinching. "Bring it on, Karen, I'm not scared of you." She glared, a storm of hate in her eyes, then spun around and marched back to her SUV. The door slammed with a thunderous crack, and she peeled out, tires spitting gravel like shrapnel. A cloud of dust marked her exit. I watched her go, shaking my head. If she wanted a war, I'd give her one she'd never forget. The next few days, I was a man on a mission. I set up security cameras everywhere, their lenses gleaming like sentries. Motion sensors hugged the fence line, ready to catch any sneak attack. And my dogs? They prowled with fierce determination, sensing the battle wasn't over. Karen wouldn't blindside me, not on my watch. Sure enough, her next move hit fast. A letter dropped into my mailbox, the county seal glaring at me like a warning shot. I ripped it open, my pulse racing as I scanned the words. A complaint against me. Claims of violating community standards, environmental risks, safety threats, pure garbage. Karen had actually done it. She'd unleashed her ridiculous threat. I laughed out loud, the sound bouncing off the walls. Did she really think this would shake me? What a joke. I grabbed my phone, dialed some contacts, and piled my paperwork high proof of my rights, my victory. Then I booked a meeting at the county office. Time to end this. I walked in wearing my beat-up jeans and flannel, cool and unbothered. There sat Karen, primped up like she was meeting royalty, smirking at me like she'd already won. I sprawled into a chair, legs stretched out, totally at ease. "Think you've got me trapped, Karen? Think again." A clerk ushered us into a stuffy office, the air heavy with the scent of old files. A grizzled official sat behind a messy desk, peering at the complaint through his glasses. "Okay," he grumbled, eyeing us both. "This says your land's an illegal event spot with hazardous junk and dangerous animals. That right?" Karen shot up straight. "Yes!" she cried, her voice shrill. "He's got attack dogs that nearly ripped families apart. His land's a menace to us all." The official turned to me, eyebrow raised. "Your take, sir?" I slid my folder across the desk, calm and collected. Here's the truth, I said. Karen and 100 others invaded my property, no permission, nothing. I've got videos showing my dogs didn't touch a soul they're trained to protect, not attack. He frowned, flipping through my evidence. Karen's smug grin started to crack. Oh, how sweet that was. And check this, I added, tapping the police report. The cops who showed up, they said it loud and clear. Karen's little party was illegal. She had no right to be there, none. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She gaped like a stranded fish, priceless. The official sighed, rubbing his temples like he'd had enough. Ma'am, he said, his voice weary, this complaint's got no legs. This land's private, and your HOA's got no power here. There's no violation, Zip. Karen's face twisted into a furious snarl. But he... She spun toward me, eyes blazing. You can't just walk away from this. I grinned, smooth as silk. Watch me, Karen, I already have. The official shot her a hard look. Ma'am, drop this now, or you might be the one in hot water. She froze, her body stiff, hands clawing the chair. She glared at me, pure venom in her stare, but she knew she'd lost again. Without a word, she bolted up and stormed out, the door slamming like a thunderclap. I watched her go, shaking my head. Some people never learn when to quit. I stepped outside, the fresh air hitting me like a wave of freedom. It was done for real this time. Karen had thrown every trick at me, lies, threats, the works, and she'd crashed hard every step of the way. That night, I sat on my porch, the sunset painting the sky in fiery hues. Titan's head rested in my lap, his tail tapping a lazy beat against the wood. Shadow and the pack sprawled around me, at peace at last. I sipped my drink, the quiet sinking into my bones. Let Karen plot all she wanted, she'd never take this land from me. It was mine now and forever. Let me tell you something. There's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own land, breathing in the crisp air, knowing it's yours to protect, yours to cherish. It's a slice of freedom that no entitled neighbor, no clipboard-wielding HOA tyrant should ever be allowed to snatch away. And yet, that's exactly what Karen tried to do in this story, trampling over boundaries like they were nothing more than chalk lines on a playground. But here's the thing, she lost. And thank God for that. This whole saga screams one truth loud and clear. Property rights are sacred. They're the bedrock of personal freedom. When you own land, it's not just dirt and grass. It's your sanctuary, your escape from the world's chaos. The landowner in this story wasn't just fighting for a patch of earth. He was fighting for his right to say, this is mine, and you don't get to waltz in uninvited. And honestly, I felt his rage in my bones. Imagine sipping your morning coffee, soaking in the peace, only to have a parade of strangers roll up like they own the place. Who wouldn't see red? But let's talk about Karen. Oh, Karen. She's the poster child for everything wrong with HOAs. Don't get me wrong, community standards have their place. But when did keeping up appearances turn into storming someone's land for a camping trip? Karen's power trip wasn't about community. It was about control. She strutted in like a queen, clipboard in hand, convinced her HOA badge gave her dominion over every blade of grass in the neighborhood. And when the landowner dared to say no, she threw a tantrum like a toddler denied a toy. It's laughable until you realize how many people like her wield their tiny fiefdoms to bully others into submission. Here's where I get fired up. HOAs were never meant to be mini dictatorships. They're supposed to serve the community, not steamroll individual rights. But too often they become playgrounds for power-hungry busybodies who think their rules trump basic decency. Karen's stunt wasn't just rude, it was a blatant abuse of power. And the fact that she dragged the county into it? Pathetic. She weaponized bureaucracy because she couldn't handle being told no. Sound familiar? It's the same entitlement that makes you want to scream when someone cuts in line or parks in your driveway without asking. But here's the kicker, the landowner won. And not just because he had the law on his side, though thank goodness for that, but because he stood his ground. He didn't cave to social pressure or let Karen's guilt-tripping, "You're ruining the community," shake him. He knew his rights, and he fought for them. That's a lesson for all of us. Freedom isn't free. Sometimes you've got to bare your teeth figuratively, or in this case, with a pack of loyal dogs to protect what's yours. So what's the takeaway? Simple, respect boundaries, or get ready for a fight. And if you're ever tempted to join an HOA, remember Karen. Because power corrupts, and sometimes the biggest threats to your peace aren't strangers, they're your neighbors.